Father, I just thank you for your word, and even though we're wading into some of the more difficult sections, God, I pray that you would give everyone listening ears. Help us, God, to comprehend. Help us, God, to understand that you have a future not only for your people Israel, but you have a future even for us. And we are looking forward to a great time when your Son, Jesus Christ, comes back again in great glory and power. That is our hope. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. The chapters that we are going to look at tonight have been the very controversial section of Scripture. They deal with a temple that Ezekiel talks about, a temple that is on a very high mountain in the nation of Israel. And in that temple, we're going to see there are priests. We're going to see that there are sacrificial offerings. We're going to see that there are various feast days that are celebrated that were part of the Levitical law. And we have to wonder, what is this all about? Is there going to be a future temple where we're going to get back involved with animal sacrifices again? And if so, then how do we explain the fact that Jesus Christ died once and for all for the sins of mankind? It's really the problem that we're facing in these chapters that we're going to look at over the next 3 weeks. So there are various kinds of interpretations as to what this temple is all about. There are those, for example, that would say, well, what Ezekiel is doing is he is memorializing Solomon's temple. And we're going to see in the very first verse of chapter 40 that it's 14 years after the destruction of Solomon's temple that this particular vision was given to Ezekiel. So 14 years have passed. The temple is gone. The people have been taken off into captivity. And so what Ezekiel is doing, according to some schools of thought, he's simply memorializing Solomon's temple. Now, the problem with that is, when you study this temple that we are going to be studying over the next couple of weeks, it has no resemblance whatsoever to Solomon's temple. This temple is many times larger. It sits on a plateau that is many, many times larger than Solomon's temple or any temple that the Jews have ever had. This temple is far more magnificent. It doesn't even contain the same amount of furniture that Solomon's temple did, as you will soon see. So, there's no semblance whatsoever between Ezekiel's temple, what we also call the Messiah's temple, and Solomon's temple. It would seem to me, if Ezekiel is going to memorialize a temple, he would try to describe it accurately. And certainly, there is no comparison between the two temples. Then there are those who say, well, Ezekiel is actually looking forward to the second temple, which would be Zerubbabel's temple. And you remember after the Jews were allowed to come back from Babylonian captivity under King Cyrus, they came back with the express purpose of rebuilding that temple that was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. It's called Zerubbabel's temple. But that temple was much smaller than Solomon's temple. That temple was not nearly as beautiful as Solomon's temple. Remember, the people that saw Solomon's temple and saw Zerubbabel's temple were very disappointed because they wanted that temple to be as great and glorious as Solomon's temple was, but it was not. And so again, there's no comparison between the temple that Ezekiel's describing in this text and Zerubbabel's temple, and so we would make the very same argument again. If you're going to talk about a future temple, and you're getting inspiration from God to do so, it seems as though you would describe it accurately. But there is no semblance between Ezekiel's temple and Zerubbabel's temple. And then there are those who say this temple refers to the church. And I just marvel at anyone who tries to compare this temple with the church. Now, the people who do this are involved in what is called replacement theology. These are people who hate prophecy. These are people who hate the Jewish people. I would say they are anti-Semitic. And they believe that God is literally finished with the Jews. They are amillennialists. That is, they do not believe in a literal millennial reign of Christ on earth. Remember over in Revelation chapter 20, it talks about Christ coming and ruling on earth for 1,000 years. Well, we call that the millennium. And they would say, no, there's no such thing as a 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. He's not coming back to earth. No. Rather, the millennium refers to the church age. But the church age now is 2,000 years old. And it talks about 1,000 years in the book. Well, that 1,000 years is simply a definite figure for an indefinite period of time. So they're spiritualizing Scripture. They're making words say what they really don't mean. And that's the problem of amillennialism. So an amillennialist does not believe in the rapture of the church. An amillennialist does not believe in a literal Antichrist. An amillennialist does not believe in a 7-year tribulation on the earth. An amillennialist does not believe there's going to be a tribulation temple. An amillennialist does not believe that Jesus Christ is literally coming back to this earth with his feet standing on the Mount of Olives. An amillennialist does not believe in the Battle of Armageddon, in a literal battle. And an amillennialist does not believe that there's going to be a millennial temple. But when you look at this temple that Ezekiel's describing, and you try to connect it with the church, you wonder, how can you possibly do that? Because this temple that Ezekiel describes talks about priests, talks about offering animal sacrifices. It talks about observing the various festivals, such as the Feast of Trumpets, the Feast of Passover, the Feast of Tabernacles. There's the Sabbath offering, the new moon offering, the daily sacrifices offered by the priest at the altar of burnt offering. What does all of this have to do with the church? How can you possibly say that this symbolizes the church? I simply do not understand that. Furthermore, remember, the Apostle Paul speaks of the church as a mystery. You see that in Ephesians chapter 2. That is, the prophets of the Old Testament really knew nothing about the concept of the church, that Jews and Gentiles would become one in Jesus Christ. So Paul says that's new revelation. That's new revelation that was given to apostles and prophets. It's revelation that Isaiah did not know anything about, Jeremiah did not know anything about, nor any of the other prophets. It's something that is new in Revelation. So, if the church is new revelation given to apostles and prophets in the days of the Christian church, then how is it a mystery if it's revealed by Ezekiel in this so-called temple? So, I reject amillennialism. I'll tell you, I probably said this before to you, but that's okay. I don't mind repeating myself because we're all a little senile here, including me. But, I was raised in a Bible college, and I got my undergraduate degree in a Bible college that taught amillennialism. I didn't know anything about the millennium when I went there, and it was never taught in the church that I attended. Never even heard it from my own dad, who was a very committed Christian. So I knew nothing about the second coming of Christ or his rule and reign on the earth. So when you're in Bible college and you're taught about amillennialism, okay, you can accept this. And I took a course in the book of Revelation from a man who was an amillennialist. Now I'm going to be graduating and I'm going to be starting a church out in Saugus. And I'm very young, I'm only 23, 24 years of age at the time. I've never had a church in my life that I'm going to be a pastor of. I've never preached every week. It's kind of nervous to think about that. And this is just a small church. It's a deliberate break off from another congregation. So anyway, I'm reading the book of Zechariah and chapter 14, which talks about Christ coming to the Mount of Olives. And so I asked my professor, I said, what does all this mean? And there's a big earthquake that takes place. And he said, well, that refers to the new birth. Okay. That's Jesus coming into your heart. The Mount of Olives is your heart. And a great earthquake is the change that takes place in your life when you're born again. And I'm saying, where on earth did you ever get that idea? I mean, I'm expected to preach every week. How on earth can I possibly understand that? Because what we're really doing is taking words that are very clear in understanding and giving some kind of mystical meaning to them. It was that moment that caused me to say, I do not believe in nominalism, but I'm going to search the scriptures to find out a better alternative, and I ended up becoming a premillennialist. So, but you have those kinds of experiences. Now, I want us to identify the 7 biblical temples. Since this chapter and the future chapters that we're going to look at deal with the temple, we might just look at the temples in Scripture. You have the tabernacle of Moses, mentioned in the book of Exodus, chapters 25 through 40, from the year 1500 up to 966 BC. It's in Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, where God says, "And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them." And of course, it was the tabernacle that was with the Jews as they were wandering around into the wilderness and even made it into the promised land. Then you have Solomon's temple, 1 Kings chapters 5 through 8, from 966 to 586 BC. That's the temple that we've been talking about in the book of Ezekiel. That temple is now doomed, 14 years, been burned, when Ezekiel begins to write the study that we're going to be talking about tonight. Then you have Zerubbabel's temple, as we've talked about, Ezra chapters 1 and 2, from the year 515 BC to 70 AD. Zerubbabel's temple was also known as Herod's temple. It was the temple that was in existence in the days of Jesus. Remember, the King Herod was repairing the temple, making it more beautiful, expanding it. Even the disciples had to acknowledge that it was something beautiful, but Jesus said, the day is going to come when not one stone would be standing on another. So in 70 AD, that temple was destroyed. Now, it's interesting to note that the Muslims today want us to believe that the Jews never had a temple on Temple Mount in Jerusalem. That they have had sole ownership of that property, and that the Jews have no business being there. Of course, there's been, if you've been to Israel, you know there's a lot of excavation work, archaeological work that's being done around the temple area. And what the Jews are looking for is a lot of evidence of Solomon's temple and exactly where that temple was. They're trying to find relics. The Muslims are doing everything they can to destroy the work that the Jewish archaeologists are doing. But the Jewish archaeologists have come up with evidence that some recent discovery actually comes from the caves where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And what they found in those caves, Qumran, were 9 silver coins. And these 9 silver coins date all the way back to the 2nd century AD. They date back around 135 or before. And remember, it was in 135 when Emperor Hadrian of Rome sent his troops in to destroy the city of Jerusalem. But among those 9 coins is the largest Jewish coin ever issued. It's a half-ounce silver coin called the Petra drachma. And on one side of that coin is Jerusalem's second temple, King Herod's temple, or Zerubbabel's temple. And on the other side of the coin are 4 plants known as the 4 species, used during ceremonies of the Feast of Sukkot or the Feast of Tabernacles. That coin has given absolute evidence that there was a temple that belonged to the Jews during the days of Jesus, and that the Muslims have no right to that land because the Jews were there first. And where the Dome of the Rock presently stands, there was a temple that belonged to the Jewish people, and Jesus spoke from that temple. Well, then you have the body of our Lord Jesus referred to as a temple. Remember, Jesus spoke of himself in that way. He said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Well, everybody was astounded at that because they thought he was referring to Herod's temple. You mean you destroy this temple and in 3 days you're going to reconstruct it? That's a foolish thought. But the Bible says, and Jesus was implying, he's talking about his own body. His body is temple of God. And then you have the body of you have the church. The church of Jesus Christ is referred to as a temple. For example, in Ephesians chapter 2, the church is called a building, and it's fitly joined together as a holy temple of God. Remember that Paul referred to the church at Corinth as the temple of God. The whole church, you're the temple of God. But then we need to remember that we as individuals are the church. And so each one of us who are believers in Jesus Christ and have the Holy Spirit within us are the temple of God. That's why Paul said, do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit? And then you have the tribulation temple. That's the sixth temple mentioned in Scripture. This is talked about in Daniel 9, 2 Thessalonians 2, and Revelation chapter 11. We won't look at all of this. But the question is, how is this temple going to get there? Because presently there's the Dome of the Rock, this Muslim shrine on Temple Mount. And yet the Jews believe, and the Bible says, there's going to be a temple there that the Jews will own. I think I've talked about being. Anybody ever been to the Temple Institute in Jerusalem? 1, 2, 3 of them. That is, if you ever go to Israel, that is a must place to go. Because there's some Orthodox Jews there that believe there's going to be a temple on Temple Mount. And they've made the furnishings for that temple. You have the golden candlestick made of gold. I mean, it's worth millions of dollars. The altar of incense, they've got all the garments for the priests made. You can just see them right there. And you can ask them questions. And I remember asking, when do you think this temple is going to be built? And where is it going to be placed? What's going to happen to the Dome of the Rock? Well, here's the answer again. We don't know exactly, but this is what we believe. We believe there's going to be a great earthquake, and the Dome of the Rock is going to be destroyed, and then this temple is going to come down out of heaven and land right on the spot where Solomon's temple once stood. Oh, okay, well, that's what they're hoping for. But they're prepared for this temple when it comes. Now, it's a tribulation temple. How is the tribulation temple going to get built? Well, you go to the book of Daniel, and you see that there's going to be a covenant between the Antichrist and a group of Arab Muslims. I'm saying Arab Muslims because we're putting this right up to today's time. They're the ones in control of that dome, of that Temple Mount. And they're going to negotiate a peace agreement for the Jews to be able to build in that temple. If you look, for example, at Revelation chapter 11, so take your Bibles and I'll show you something in Revelation chapter 11 that I find very interesting. Because in Revelation 11 we are in the tribulation period. And John, of course, in this vision says, and I was given a reed, this is verse 1, I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel stood saying, rise and measure the temple of God, the altar, and those who worship there, and leave out the court, which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles. And they shall tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. So this temple seems to be going to be constructed in an area very close to what belongs to the Gentiles. Because you're not to measure the outer court, for it has been given to the Gentiles. So if you think of the Temple Mount, there's a picture of it there on the wall behind you. You know, you have the Dome of the Rock there. Well, that's owned by Gentiles. They're Arab, Muslims, they're Gentiles. Is there going to be a tribulation temple, say, built right behind it? So that you have the Dome of the Rock and you have this tribulation temple on the same property? Is that what we understand from the text? Well, it's a thought. And so there's evidently some kind of agreement, as we would read in the book of Daniel, for the Muslims to allow the Jews to build this temple. Now, that would be unthinkable today, would it not? Especially with all of the fervor that's going on at Temple Mount and the problems that they've had there in recent weeks. So, like I said last week or a few weeks ago, whenever I said, you would agree with me that something very catastrophic has to occur for there ever to be an Antichrist who would be a one-world dictator, so to speak. Something very catastrophic would have to happen, would you not agree, for the Muslims to ever agree for the Jews to build a temple on Temple Mount? I mean, that just makes it something catastrophic has to happen. And so, as I've probably thrown out to you, these are the things that are possibilities. How about the rapture of the church? You know, you have a billion some people leaving the earth. I mean, that make a mess on the 405 freeway and cause a little more problems in airplanes. But that'd shake up the world, especially when graveyards are opened up. And then you have the Psalm 83 war taking place, where the nations around Israel attack and Israel wins, and now you find Israel occupying territory from the Nile River to the river Euphrates. Then you have the Gog-Magog war with Russia and the Muslims invading Israel, and they get cremated. Things that we've talked about. When you put all this together, the world is aghast. The world can't understand what's going on. That's how I sized it up. And so they're looking for some charismatic leader to come, and the Muslims now are so weakened, they've been defeated time and time again by these Jews, that they're willing to negotiate a peace covenant for the Jews to build their temple there. And then if you look at this text in the book of Revelation, it says, once this temple has been measured out and built, then they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. How long is 42 months? That's what, 3.5 years? So I think it's going to take 3.5 years to build a temple. That sounds reasonable. The architectural drawings are already done. Whether they use them or not, I don't know. The furniture has already been made. The priestly garments have already been made. They already have DNA on who is a Levite and who is not. By the way, this is an aside, but I found it interesting. There was an article in the New York Times this last, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, where they've been doing over in the Israel area, they've been doing some architectural diggings, and they came across ancient bones, which they identified as the ancient Canaanite people. And they did some DNA testing on the ancient Canaanite people and compared that with the people of Lebanon and the Lebanese. The DNA of Lebanese people is identical to the DNA of the ancient Canaanite people. Isn't that interesting? Now, how do they determine whether a Jew is a Levite or not? Maybe they're digging up some bones and finding that there was an article in the Jerusalem Post years ago where they can actually identify a Levite from the other Jewish people. There's a distinctive DNA that they have. And so they already have a university, or they already have a school training priests, because they believe this temple is imminent. Anytime there could be that earthquake. By the way, there is an earth fault that runs right across that area. It's going to doom the dome of the rock, and down out of heaven comes this tabernacle. Well, you to see what happens, of course, according to Paul in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, is once the Antichrist makes the agreement, once the temple is built, what does he do? In 3.5 years it's completed, then he seizes control at the 3.5-year point. He proclaims himself to be God. And then, what does the text say? And they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. I mean, in other words, there's going to be a war against the Jewish people. That's called the time of Jacob's trouble, the second half of the tribulation period, 42 months. So we have a tribulation temple. And then we have the millennial temple, or what I'm also calling Messiah's temple. That's chapters 40 through 48, so let's get into it. Notice the communication. Here's the point we are now at. The communication to Ezekiel of this messianic or millennial temple. Notice these 5 things. There's the promise of Israel's future glory. What I want us to see is, we're wrapping up this book of Ezekiel. As you can see, there's only 9 chapters left out of the 48. And if you've been with me through most of this time, you know that the book of Ezekiel has been a pretty negative book, and there's been a repetitive message throughout. And that message is, if a righteous man turns from his righteousness and commits iniquity, he'll die. And if a non-righteous man turns and becomes righteous, he's going to live. And that's been the theme throughout, and so there's a call to repent, because you Jews have been an abomination to the Lord. Repent, repent, destruction is coming. That's been what we've talked about for all these weeks. And so now we come to the end of the book, and there's a bit of hope. And that hope is seen in this particular temple. So it's a promise of Israel's future glory. That's what these chapters deal with. Notice the period of Ezekiel's vision, verse 1 of chapter 40. In the 25th year of our captivity, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was captured. That's where I got that 14 years. On the very same day, the hand of the Lord was upon me. Now, if you figure that out, and I didn't, somebody else did, that would be the 10th of Nisan, 572 BC. That's when this particular vision is given to Ezekiel. Now, that's a very significant day in Jewish history, a day that they cannot observe any longer because they don't have a temple and they don't have lambs to offer as a sacrifice. But it was on the 10th day of Nisan every year where the lamb was purchased to be offered as a sacrifice on Passover. They'd give their lamb without spot, without blemish. They would take the lamb and put it in their home as a pet for 3 days. Can you imagine having a lamb in your house for 3 days? And some little kid might get pretty attached to that lamb. Now we're going to have to slaughter that lamb on the 14th, because that would be Passover. That lamb then becomes the meal for the Passover for that particular family. Then you have the place of the vision, verse 2. It says, in the visions of God, he took me into the land of Israel. So now, remember, he's in Babylon, but in this vision, he's going to the land of Israel. And set me on a very high mountain. On it toward the south was something like the structure of a city. So there's a very high mountain here, and we'll see more about that in a little bit. But I just went through Scripture in what happens on this very high mountain. There's 7 things that I found, and I've got them there in your notes. It's on a very high mountain, or a place where the precepts of God go forth. So the law of God goes forth from a very high mountain. It's a place of punishment, as God will judge between the nations and rebuke many people. What we're going to learn a little later on, I think it's in this lesson today, that there's going to be a prince, and that prince is going to head up the Department of Justice. He's going to be like a chief sheriff in town, because we're in the millennium here, and there's going to be sin, and there's going to be some crime that takes place, and that's going to be dealt with very swiftly. And so judgment comes from a place called the Very High Mountain. It's a place where the peace of the world will emanate. It's a place for the performing of Jewish worship. It's a place for the prayers of all peoples. It's a place for the proclaiming of God's glory among the nations. It's a place for the participation of all nations in an offering to God with clean vessels in the house of the Lord to be shared among the priests and Levites. So all the nations are going to come to this very high mountain and give an offering to God, but it's going to be an offering that the priests and the Levites are going to benefit. So those are 7 things the Scripture says about what happens on a very high mountain, and here's Ezekiel being taken to a very high mountain. Now notice the presence of an angel and the Lord. We want to pick up at verse 3 of chapter 4. He took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze. He had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. And the man said to me, Son of man, look with your eyes, and hear with your ears, and fix your mind on everything I show you. For you were brought here so that I might show them to you. So, here's this man. Obviously, he's an angel. He has the appearance of bronze. He has a measuring rod in his hand. And that measuring rod, we're going to see in verse 5, is 6 cubits long, which means it's about 10.5 feet long. And notice, and he measured the width of the wall structure, 1 rod, and the height 1 rod. So, the wall around this building that's on this very high mountain is 10.5 feet high and 10.5 feet thick. We're also going to see that not only does Ezekiel meet this angel that is giving him a tour of what's on that very high mountain, but where he's going to meet Jesus, the Messiah. And I'll show you that when we get over to chapter 44, in particular 43. So even the Lord himself is going to spend some time talking to Ezekiel. Notice the purpose of the tour. The purpose is seen there in the latter part of verse 4. Declare to the house of Israel everything you see. So, once this vision is over with, Ezekiel has an assignment. I want you to go to the captives, and I want you to tell them everything you see. I want you to give them some hope, because 14 years before their temple has been destroyed, they're taken into captivity. I want the people to know that God is not finished with you yet. And even though these people to whom he is talking to will never see a future temple, God still has a plan for his people. In spite of what all millennialists and replacement theologists say. Notice the construction now of Messiah's temple. This becomes kind of a laborious part, so I'm going to move quickly through the difficult parts of this and just hit the highlights. But notice there's going to be a sanctuary in the midst of Israel. If you look over at chapter 37, verses 26 and 28. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them, says the Lord. And it shall be, get this, an everlasting covenant with them. And I will establish them and multiply them, and I will set my sanctuary in their midst forevermore. Okay. Now, God says, I'm going to set a sanctuary in their midst. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Indeed, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. The nations also will know that I, the Lord, sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary is in their midst forevermore. So, there's going to be a sanctuary, there's going to be a temple again, and God is going to see to it that that temple is put there. It will be part of a covenant that God has made with the Jewish people, and that sanctuary will be with them forevermore. At least during the millennial age, because in heaven there is no temple, but God's covenant people will be here, and I think that relates as much to the people as it does to the sanctuary. And the sanctuary really is, my presence is with you. Okay, we're not going to get too bogged down with things, but the structure of the sanctuary is seen there in verse 5. The text speaks to a man with his measuring rod, as we've said. And there's 22 times where he's measuring something. So, you have the outer court in chapters 40, verses 5 through 27. So, mark 27 instead of 20. That's my mistake. So, I'm not going to talk to anything there. You just see he measures the outer court, the things that are part of that. Then he measures the inner court, chapter 40, verses 28 through 47. Notice, I think, of things of interest there. There's the table for preparing sacrifices. And there's an altar in front of the temple for offering animal sacrifices. Then notice Messiah's temple. That's chapter 40, beginning at verse 48 through 41, verse 26. The things I think of interest here, there's going to be the holy place. There's the Holy of Holies. There's also a temple wall. There's going to be 30 three-story chambers on top of that wall. So this temple's going to have at least a 3-story structure to it. Notice there's a separate building west of the temple. That's something I would just mark out there. I don't know if you have it. Do you have 1 Chronicles 26, verse 2 in there? Is that in your notes?
No.
Good. I got it. It doesn't belong there. I had it in the original notes, and I guess I got them out before I got them to you. I don't know. I got some scriptures in there that don't belong. But anyway, it's just interesting that there's the holy place, the Holy of Holies. There's this separate building, which we know very little about, nothing about. Kind of at the west end. And then there's these storage chambers on top of the wall, 30 of them. Then you have the chamber of the outer wall, you have the outer wall, and you have the altar of burnt offerings described in detail in chapter 43, verses 13 through 27. Now, okay, that's the boring stuff. We were kind of past that. Now I want to go back through this and just pick out some things. Because what I want to pick out I find extremely interesting. So I'm going to select some of the details of the temple. First of all, in the inner court there are 3 gates. There's an east gate, there's a north gate, there's a south gate, and then next to the gate inside there are vestibules. And on each vestibule there are 8 tables for animal sacrificing. And there are 4 tables hewn out of stone for burnt offerings, along with the instruments for sacrificing animals. So there's 12 tables in all.
Are you talking about the Messianic temple?
Yes, I am.
Why would there be sacrifices in the Messianic temple?
That's the big question. You'll have to come back next week. This is the big difficulty of this section of Scripture. The question that you just asked. I have an answer, but I'll see what I do. But that's my lesson next week. Number 2, notice there's also the appearance of cherubim and palm trees etched in great detail throughout the temple. Now the cherubim, remember they in Scripture have a responsibility of guarding the holiness of God. And these cherubim are the very same cherubim that Ezekiel saw in his initial vision. Remember coming out of the north sky. They're the 4-headed cherubim with 4 wings, and then there are wheels within wheels. And, you remember that scene. Remember the cherubim had 4 heads. The head of a lion, the head of a man, the head of an ox, the head of an eagle. And we looked at it then, and I think it's the same today. Maybe what's being portrayed here is the 4-fold ministry of Jesus as presented in the 4 Gospels. I mean, for example, if you look at the Gospel of Matthew, He's writing to the Jews. The basic theme is Jesus is the Lion of Judah. If you look at the Gospel of Mark, Mark presents Jesus as a servant. He's one who goes about doing good. And so therefore he's like an ox, the beast of burden. If you look at the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is portrayed as a man. His human nature is there. He's the Son of Man. And if you look at the Gospel of John, what is presented but the deity of Jesus. And so he's like an eagle that's soaring and that's majestic. So you have these four-headed cherubim etched throughout this temple. Then you have these palm trees. I don't know exactly what palm trees represent. They might represent victory. They might represent righteousness. When I think of palm trees or palm branches, though these are palm trees, remember when Jesus made his triumphal entry into Jerusalem, palm branches were laid before him and he was being hailed as king. So there may be some similarity there. The next thing, when the angel measured the temple itself, it was 87 and a half feet long, wide, 87 and a half feet wide by 175 feet long. So in other words, this temple was 15,312 square feet. That is many, many times larger than Solomon's temple, which was maybe 11, or I'm thinking, what's 30 by 60? Anyway, that would be Solomon's temple. This is 87 and a half by 175. So, much bigger. Notice this, that the mountain plateau on which the temple rests and the holy city is 50 miles long and 50 miles wide. Now, I'm going to tell you this next week, but I'll tell it to you today. What is that? That's 2,500 square feet, square miles. That's what, 2,500 square miles, right? Okay. That is 2.5 times the size of Orange County. So, this very high mountain upon which the temple rests is going to be leveled off at the top. There's going to be a plateau. That plateau is 50 miles long and 50 miles wide. You can see a very big area. Over 2.5 times the size of Orange County. So, how does this mountain get there? Like, well, remember when Christ comes back again, what happens? There's going to be that great earthquake. Remember, we've talked about how there's going to be great topographical changes. And Jerusalem is going to be raised up to be the highest point in the world during the time of the millennium. And this mountaintop will be leveled off, so the temple will sit on that. And if we get in next week, we'll talk about all the things that take place on that property. Notice next the significance of the furnishings that are missing from the temple. Now, hopefully you've studied the Old Testament, you people particularly. You remember what was in Solomon's temple, right? Here you have 2 rooms, right? You have a holy place and the Holy of Holies, and there's a veil that separates the two, right? Got that? So when a priest would walk in the holy place, to his left would be the golden candlestick, right? In front of the veil that separates the 2 rooms would be the altar of incense, and to the right side would be the table of showbread, right? Got that picture? Behind the veil was the Ark of the Covenant. I don't have to draw that, David. You got it, right? Now, that was the furnishings in Solomon's temple. In this temple, which is many times larger than Solomon's temple, there are these 2 rooms, the holy place and the Holy of Holies. There is no golden lampstand, because Christ is the light of the world. There is no table to show bread, because Jesus is the bread of life. There is no Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies, because Christ is present and His Shekinah glory fills the earth. There is no veil separating the Holy of Holies from the holy place. And remember what happened when Jesus died on the cross. The veil was rent in two, meaning that the way to heaven is now open through the death of Christ. There's only one piece of furniture in this entire temple of 15,000 square feet. I don't know what's in these other rooms, but I'm talking primarily about the holy place in the Holy of Holies. And that is a wooden altar that is called the table that is before the Lord. It's the altar of incense. The only piece of furniture. And the description of this wooden altar is more like the table of showbread than it is like the golden altar of incense back in Solomon's day. It shows one thing. Prayer is represented in this temple because that's what the altar of incense represents. The prayers, that's the smoke of the incense going upward, representing the prayers of the people, the psalmist said. Interesting. The things that are missing in this temple. Let's look at chapter 43. It's the cloud of the returning glory of the Lord. This is the interesting part too, and let's wrap it up. We've dealt with this before. It's the departure of the glory of God. Remember, as we go back to Ezekiel 10, what happened? Remember how Ezekiel was taken in a vision to Solomon's temple, and what was going on inside the temple? There was graffiti all over the temple walls. What was the graffiti? It was all the Egyptian gods and goddesses. There were all the priests in there burning incense and worshiping these idols in the temple of God. And it was an abominable act, and so God could no longer stay there. And so Ezekiel then tells us bit by bit how God's glory began to leave the temple. It was in the Holy of Holies where the Ark of the Covenant was, and it moved to the threshold of the temple. Remember that? And now the glory of God is about ready to leave the temple. And then it goes above the cherubim that Ezekiel sees in his vision. And then it goes to the eastern gate, hovers there. Then it goes across the eastern gate to the Mount of Olives. And it vanishes. But notice it went in stages. Because God is patient. God is giving them still a chance to repent, but He can no longer stay in the Holy of Holies when what is happening in the holy place with all the abominable acts and idolatrous worship. Now what we see is the descending of God's glory to the Mount of Olives through the eastern gate. This is the interesting thing. That just as God's glory left, now God's glory returns. And it returns from the east. It returns through the eastern gate. It goes into the temple. So it left the temple, went over to the eastern gate, to the Mount of Olives. Now, the same path. God's glory returns. You see this in chapter 43. Notice what it says here. Afterwards he brought me to the gate that faces toward the east. So there's the eastern gate. Next week we're going to talk about the eastern gate. If you don't know the story of the eastern gate, I'm not going to tell it until next week. But I am going to say it is this passage of Scripture about the eastern gate that got me interested in Bible prophecy. I could care less about Bible prophecy as a 24-year-old pastor in a church that knew nothing and trying to get my feet wet in the church, and getting all confused about what to believe. But that's next week. Got to get some hooks in here. Next, and behold, the glory of the God of Israel came by way of the east. His voice was like the sound of many waters, and the earth shone with his glory. It was like the appearance of a vision which I saw, like the vision which I saw when I came to destroy the city. The visions were like the visions which I saw by the river Chebar, and I fell on my face. And the glory of the Lord came into the temple by way of the gate which faces toward the east. Glory left that way. The glory has returned that way. The Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner court. Behold, the glory of the Lord filled the temple. And then I heard him speaking to me from the temple while a man stood beside me. There's a man. Now, this is another person. Remember we said that not only was there an angel, but now we see with the Son of Man, we see where the Messiah himself appears. And notice verse 7. And he said to me, Son of Man, this is the place of my throne, and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever. No more shall the house of Israel defile my holy name, they nor the kings by their harlotry, or with the carcasses of their kings on their high places. And so, this is going to be a pure temple. And if you get down to verse 9, it says, And I will dwell in their midst forever. And so we see where Ezekiel then is to describe the temple to the house of Israel. That's verse 10. Why? That they may be ashamed of all their iniquities and let them measure the pattern. And it goes on to say, if you get down to verse 12, it says, This is the law of the temple. The whole area surrounding the mountains is most holy. Behold, this is the law of the temple. So what are we seeing here? We see where he is to describe the temple to the people, and he's to say, in describing it, they are to be reminded of all of their sin, and that this will not happen in this temple. What happened in Solomon's temple will not happen in this temple, because the Lord himself will dwell there. So he describes the temple, and hopefully shames the people for their behavior. And then he talks about the law of the temple. What is the law of the temple? The law of the temple is this is a holy building. That's the law. Reminds me of the song that we used to sing. I wish we still did. Same thing. You ever sing in your church, standing on holy ground? I'm standing on holy ground. If I was a good singer, I'd sing it for you. So, there's the first of the three parts of this temple area. Okay, well, Kevin?
The return of God to the temple, do you think that happens during the millennial reign?
Yes, it begins.
So is God then, if it begins, does God come into the temple in the form of Jesus? In the form of Jesus?
Yes.
Okay. So this is Jesus then
That's
returning
it is the
to
Messiah,
the temple.
the Jewish Messiah.
He will reign, basically that'll be his capital,
Yeah,
his headquarters.
that's exactly right. And we'll get into more detail in the next 2 weeks on this. Okay.
This makes me think that God is telling them, and there's the question of, okay, why do we have these sacrifices and this stuff going on here, when Christ has already given the sacrifice? This makes me think that, okay, God is doing a replay here. He's taking them back when the law was given and they were told what they were to do, and they continually disobeyed. Now he's showing them this is what this was all about. This is why.
You just answered Bob's question.
This is, I'm showing you, why I said all those things in the beginning. And now, so you can understand. And Jesus, when he read that scripture, when he was standing in the synagogue, he only read the first half of the verse. He says, this is happening now. I'm in your midst. And they didn't accept him. They rejected him.
Okay?
Yeah, and so I think this is just...
Well, you know what? I don't think you could say it any better than what I'm going to say next week. There's a sense in which the sacrifices are for the Jewish people,
Right.
and for the heathen nations that have become believers. And it's a commemoration and it's a looking back so the Jews finally understand what these sacrifices were all about. Just as we observe the Lord's Supper with the same intent, we as the church will not be involved in those sacrifices because Christ has been our sacrifice, but that's something the Jews never understood. And so God is using visual aids. So I don't need to come next week then. But we'll have a little more to say about it. But this is the biggest issue that the amillennialists will bring up and say this cannot refer to a literal temple with literal sacrifices because Christ already paid the price. And so, as a result of that, this has to refer to something else. And so, maybe it's a commemoration of Solomon's temple. Maybe it's looking at Zerubbabel's temple, giving them a little hope. But we're going to describe this temple next week in a little more detail. And what takes place there. Because we're going to talk about worship in the millennium.
Is there any particular church that holds to the amillennial?
Oh my, the majority of churches.
So you see it creeping into most Christian churches?
It is the predominant teaching of Roman Catholicism. It is the predominant teaching of mainline Protestant churches. It is even taught in many of your Protestant denominations like the Church of Christ, the Christian Church, your more liberal Baptists, Presbyterian, Methodist, all teach an all-millennial position.
All the Lutherans.
Lutherans?
Years ago in the American Lutheran Church, they used to have a lot of pastors there that were pre-millennial. And they started phasing them out. The main church in downtown Los Angeles, I attended there when we were a little kid, Maxwell Street. And they had, who's kind of interesting, they were just phasing people out. They wanted the older people to kind of fade away and move on and things like that. And the younger ones, they were teaching more of this thing going on. Lutherans, millennialism and all that.
I was raised Southern Baptist, so some of these ideas I had never until I started meeting people.
Millennialism, never heard of it. God, see, Southern Baptists would be yes, they would be a premillennial.
I could train.
So you were raised understanding what we're talking about here. You see, that's still a more Calvary Chapel movement is along this line as well. I mean, they're strong premillennial position. Though the Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa, where Chuck Smith used to be, what's the guy's name there now? He's totally anti-Israel. And he's totally, I believe, totally against I only know this, well, I read an article about him, first of all, and then I have a lady in my class on Sunday morning, my Sunday morning class of Mariners, that lives right next to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. And I asked her why she doesn't go there. And she says, because the pastor does not believe that God has a plan for the nation of Israel, and he's more amillennial. And I don't agree with his theology. So there is a movement now, even within the Calvary Chapel movement, to pull away from premillennialism.
Chuck Smith wouldn't like it.
No, Chuck Smith be rolling over in his grave over that.
It's terrible. It's really a sad thing that's happening.
Yeah. what's happening in churches today is it's subtly coming in, this emergent church movement. I don't know if you know anything about the emergent church movement. Listen, this is dangerous stuff. And you don't go down the street and it doesn't say, we are an emergent church. But if you don't know what an emergent church is, maybe I'll talk about that sometime, but it is a movement that's been around for about 20 years now. And it basically discards the Bible. They're more into community than they are into biblical teaching. Go ahead.
All millennialists, do they not believe that Jesus is coming back?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
They do believe in the second coming. They believe that we're going to be caught up to meet the Lord in the air, but He's never, when you talk about second coming, He's not, well, I'll give you another position. He's not coming to the earth.
He's going to meet us in the
Well, we're going to meet in the air. That's what they would take that from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4.
Right.
Now, there's a preterist viewpoint, and the preterist viewpoint is also part of the Hank Hanegraaff, for example, I believe is a preterist, though he's now joined the Orthodox, Greek Orthodox movement. The guy's gone loony.
What do you call it, preterist?
Preterist.
What is that?
Preterist.
Preterist. P-R-E-T-I-S-T. Preterist. It's a viewpoint that Christ has already returned. And He returned in 70 A.D.
Can you tell me where I can find it?
Because we need.
I'd like to go, I want to hug him.
Well, I'll tell you, if you go to the Watchtower Society in Brooklyn, New York, and he's also there. And he went there in, I think it was 1914. I believe that was the year. And he's there inspiring the Watchtower. It's there in spirit, but he literally lives there. But the preterist viewpoint is, and it's it is a growing position today amongst evangelicals, that Christ returned in Titus of Rome to bring an end to the temple, which brought an end to Judaism. That's something I probably didn't emphasize enough tonight, but remember in 70 AD when the temple was destroyed, there's no longer a temple, there's no longer a sacrificial system, there's no longer a priesthood. Judaism can no longer follow after the Levitical law. And so what the preterist would say is, and I would agree with this, the Old Testament officially ended in 70 AD and the New Testament officially began. And God had to destroy the old law by destroying the temple. And Christ came in Titus of Rome to do that. That's the preterist viewpoint. So then there's a third coming of Christ. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Roger.
Unless I'm not hearing this right, my attitude is that Christ's death and resurrection made the temple irrelevant.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
It made it. But to the preterist, it was an official declaration from God that I am finished with the Jew. That's the position that the replacement theology people would take. That's the position of the preterist movement, which is part of an millennial movement. I'm not into that school of thought. Probably wasn't one time, but didn't know it.
Well, there's a lot of scripture they have to ignore.
Well, they spiritualize it all, that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's just like saying that the Mount of Olives is your heart. And it's like saying the earthquake is the new birth. You know, I mean, how do you read that into a text?
Hank Hanegraaff was a good friend of a Lutheran pastor in one of the two major Missouri City churches, one in Indiana, I think, the town. But he got together. So I think Hank Hanegraaff, we don't mix the various things here. I bought one of his books. I talked to him twice on the phone, and he thought I was going to give a gift to gift. I said, well, this is a one-time gift. He said, oh, if you were crust broken at that one, well, I thought, no, I don't know what I'm doing. But the book he wrote was very interesting, historical fiction, and the tribulation was the sent Christians into their lives, and all the Romans on escape.
Well, that's the position of the millennials, as they all, I understood what you're saying. We're in the tribulation now, and we're in the millennium now. They run simultaneous.
Okay. Yeah.
We're in the tribulation, and the Christians are being persecuted. We're in the millennium, in that we are the church. But the devil must have an awful long leash because he's in a pit. But at the same time, he's able to get to every one of us. So what difference does it make if he's in a pit? Okay, we'll see you next week.